Welcome to VLearn Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 29 of the subject India Earliest Times to the 8th Century AD, and the chapter is Agrarian Settlements and Agrarian Society in Peninsular India, the Deccan and the South. Topics to be covered are Introduction, Forms of Subsistence, Spread of Agrarian Settlements, Ownership Rights, Revenue and Surplus Extraction, Social Organization, New Elements and Social Change. Introduction. The earliest evidence of cultivation in peninsular India is traced back to the later phase of the New Stone Age, which is dated in the first half of the second millennium BC. The New Stone Age helps people cultivate millets like ragi and bajra, and also pulses like green gram and horse gram. Making terraces on slopes of hills was an important feature of the settlement of the New Stone Age, and the cultivation was limited to the terrace fields. Rice was found in peninsular India roughly around the beginning of the first millennium BC, which is the starting point of the Iron Age in the south. So the earliest evidence of the cultivation in peninsular India, that is in the New Stone Age, when people started cultivating millets like ragi and bajra, and also pulses, and they were also making terraces on slopes of hills. That was an important feature of the settlement of the New Stone Age. And rice was that was found in peninsular India around 1st millennium BC, which is the starting point of the Iron Age. Forms of subsistence. Forms of subsistence were determined by several factors such as geographical location, where it is located, nature of terrain, the place is actually located, material culture, and the level of technology of the given region. So the forms of subsistence, they were determined by several factors as geographical location, where it is located, nature of the terrain, material culture, and the level of technology also. Early Tamil Sangam poems speak of 5 ecozones in terms of tunnel, and the subsistence pattern of each ecozone was quite distinct. So there were various forms of survival, there were various forms of livelihood. The forms of subsistence, they were determined by the place where the people lived, the climate, the weather over there, the culture of the people there, as well as the level of technology which was reached there. And there were 5 ecozones, which were Kurinji, the hills and the forests, Mulai, the pasture land with low hills and thin forests, Marutam, the fertile agricultural plains, Netal, the sea coasts, and Palai, the arid zone. Spread of agrarian settlements. As a result of this change, there was a spread of settlements from the upland areas to the fertile river valleys, and a transformation from partly cattle rearing and partly shifting cultivation to settled agricultural economy. So earlier there was, as a result of this change, there was just earlier upland areas, there were just the settlements, the spread of settlements from the upland areas to the fertile river valleys, and there was transformation from partly, it was just earlier cattle rearing and the domestication of animals used to take place, and partly there was cultivation, but after that there was a settled agricultural economy. And the main features of this way of life were a concentration of settlements in the river valleys, a certain level of craft specialization where the people learned to do work, extensive use of iron tools and implements, new technology of the iron plugshare, management of minor irrigational facilities, and a change from the dry land crops to a more surplus yielding wet land crop of paddy. So basically changed from the dry land crops which did not yield much to a more surplus yielding wet land crop of paddy. Spread of agrarian settlements. Agricultural production in the settlements in Tamilaham. Agriculture in Tamilaham was carried on with the help of the iron plugshare. Spades, hoes, and sickles were also used for different agricultural purposes. So different tools and equipments, different iron plugshires, they were used for different agricultural purposes. Blacksmiths knew the metallurgy of iron, and some sites have yielded furnaces used for iron smelting. Iron slags also have been obtained from such sites. Iron tip plug is necessary for deep plugging. For rice and sugarcane, land needed deep plugging. So land that was needed was for deep plugging for rice and sugarcane. Settlements in the Deccan. There was an overall increase in the number of settlements in the Deccan in the river basins, on the coast and on the plateau during the Satvahana period. The Godavari Valley had the largest number of settlements. The material culture of the Satvahana settlements showed some improvements from that of the megalithic settlements of the Deccan. The tools and implements included plowshares, sickles, spades, axes, and arrowheads. So these tools and implements were used for agriculture, and the material culture of the Satvahana settlements showed some improvements from that of the megalithic settlements of the Deccan. Ownership rights. The social distinction on the basis of wealth and property takes us to the problem of ownership rights also. The social distinction, the status on the basis of wealth and property also gives rise to ownership rights. In the far south, we have seen that there were some Velala groups who were masters of the soil. This seems to suggest possession of land rather than work on others' land for wages. Occasionally, the chieftains granted our settlements to their fighters and baths. In effect, the person who was given land received the right to collect the income from the settlements which were granted to him. Revenue and surplus extraction. Revenue from agriculture. The Tamil literature mentions in Irai and Tarai as the two types of contribution received by the chieftains. The Irai appears to have been a more regular contribution, and that Tarai tribute. So Tarai, they receive the contribution in the form of tribute, and Irai, they receive a more regular contribution. Unfortunately, we do not have much information from the contemporary records about the rate and mode of collection of revenue. The rulers are often advised to be gentle and moderate in the collection of revenue. This seems to suggest that coercion and excesses were practiced by the authorities in collecting shares from the cultivators. So basically, the rulers are often advised to be gentle and moderate when they collect the revenue from the farmers. And basically, earlier there was a lot of coercion and excesses that was practiced by the authorities on the cultivators. Modes of acquiring and distributing resources in Tadaham. How did the resources reach the hands of those who required them? In the Deccan, under a well-organized state system, the modes of appropriation were regularized according to rule and custom. As we know that a regular state system was yet to emerge in the far south, there was therefore no well-regulated system of distribution of resources also. As there was no well-regulated system of rule and custom, there was no well-regulated system of distribution of resources also. Several modes of distribution of resources were prevalent in the agrarian settlements in Tamilham. Excesses in extraction. In order to make distribution of gifts possible, it was necessary that resources were collected in a center, that is a residence of the chiefs. The pooling of resources often led to plunder and pillage of agrarian tracts. Grains and cattle were looted. So the pooling of resources, that also led to plunder and pillage of agrarian tracts also, and grains and cattle were also looted. What they could not carry was destroyed. Setting fire to the peasant settlements, devastation of the harvesting fields of the enemies, and conversion of the rich gardens to wasteland were some of the acts of the plunderers. So the plunderers did all these things, and it was necessary that resources were collected in the center. There was plundering which used to happen of the enemies. Their gardens were put to waste, and also the fire was set to the peasant settlements. Social organization. Society in Tamilham. Society in ancient Tamilham was essentially tribal in character, with its kinship organizations, totem worship, and tribal cults and practices. In all the Tinais or eco zones, tribal customs prevailed, but a change was gradually happening in the predominantly agricultural region. In this region, social organization was becoming complex. This was characterized by the gradual breaking up of old kinship ties and the introduction of the Brahmanical Varna concept. Society in the Deccan. In the Deccan, all three major religious systems, that is Brahmanism, Buddhism, and Jainism, enjoyed large following. The Satvahana rulers extended their patronage to Vedic ritualism. For example, Naganika, an early queen of the Satvahana family, performed several Vedic rituals and made gift mention in the Vedic text. Jainism had some following in the region, and some of the famous teachers of the Digambara sect flourished in this period. New elements in social change. In the Deccan, some new elements made their first appearance in the agrarian order during the 1st century AD. The Satvahana and Kshatra rulers donated plots of land and even entire villages to religious beneficiaries such as Buddhist monks and Brahmins. Along with land, certain economic privileges in the form of right to collect revenue from the village and to enjoy the right over mines were also transferred to the grantees. It appears that the land grants included some fiscal and administrative rights over the peasants. So some land grants that also included some fiscal and administrative rights over the peasants, and along with land, certain economic privileges were also there in the form of right to collect revenue from the village and to enjoy the right over mines. That was all about the village community, how it was working at that particular point of time. These are some of the questions. You have to do it yourself. Question number 1, write 3 lines about the craftsman group in the Tamilham. And second, write 7 lines about the Satvahana land grants to the religious groups in the Deccan. That's all. Thank you. Happy learning. Be learning.